Hello, welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be more relevant for those of us who are parents. A couple of months ago, or one of my earlier video, I did do one on career. I think it might be just in Chinese actually, because I really do think, notwithstanding the pandemic and working from home, but even before that, with automation and artificial intelligence and our working environment, how we think about career, I really do think it's going through a huge change. There are lots of people around me who did all the right thing. They were good students. They went on to universities. Many of them got professional qualifications, either in law, finance, architecture, surveying, etc. Right? And they would imagine, that in the past was the path to long, successful career. But many of them are now in their 40s and 50s and being made redundant far earlier than they would have expected, and finding it very, very difficult to get jobs. So I did a video on that because I do think what we are seeing is not a temporary blip. I do think this is a trend that's going to be impacting more and more of us as we grow older, as we go along, right? But today I really want to focus on the young people. And what brought this video about is that over the weekend I went to visit a dear friend of mine. I've known her since I was a teenager. In fact, I met her when I did my first job. I worked at a hair salon in Hong Kong when I was 16 as a receptionist. And she was also working as a receptionist, and we've been friends ever since. So as you can imagine, we're both in our 50s now, mid to late 50s, and we both have children. So she has 2 sons and a daughter. And like most parents, right? When we get together, we'll talk about our kids. And one of her son, and she always complained about one of her sons being non-academic. Over the years, she was complaining to me about how he really don't try to work hard at school, always failing, just don't like school, and he has repeated schools, secondary school years, nearly every single time. So secondary 1 he repeated, secondary 2 he repeated, etc. Right? And so there was, obviously he wasn't going to go to universities. And it got to a stage where his father was always saying that, predicted gloom and doom for him, and saying, no good would come of him. He'll end up, in prison and up to no good, which is really sad when you think about it, right? But then this is a happy story because last year he finally decided, right, that he wasn't going to repeat for another year. So I met him over the weekend and asked him, what happened? And he said that, came last July 2019, he had got to his Form 5. And he's obviously far older than what a Form 5 age should be. I think Form 5 you should be around 16, 17. But because it repeated previous years, so he's like about 19 now. And he was told again, right, that he wasn't going to be allowed to go out. And he remember sitting at his school gate, one of the lower wall, thinking to himself that he can't bear the thought of repeating for another year. And it just so happened, one of his better teacher that he got on with, she came out and she started chatting with him. And she said, look, there are actually a lot of other options out there. It doesn't have to be just, getting your DSE and then going to uni. There are other options. And then he started to think about it. She gave him some material to look at and told him to look at some links, sent him some links. And in the end, he chose to do a diploma course because, he hasn't finished his Form 6. So the way it works is that these vocational colleges, that they'll take you as a Form 3 student or a Form 6 student. So at Form 3, they assume that you have no public exams, you've not taken any public exams. So you would then have to do a diploma in one of these vocational subjects. And actually, the choice of vocational subjects are really very, very varied. Very varied. And at the end of this video, I'm going to take you to look at that because it's very impressive. You know, it can run from anything from engineering, construction, finance. On the creative side, you know, you have acting, dance, beauty, so you know, childcare, sports. So there are really a lot out there. And in the end, he chose, right, so I'll go back to this happy story. He chose a electronic and computing course, a diploma course. And, you know, so he quits his regular secondary school and attended the vocational college from last September. And he found that that mode of learning really suited him because even though it's a full-time course, 3/4 of that learning was based on practical learning, right? So he would go on the course and they'll be instructed there. It's almost like the old apprenticeship in the old days, and I think they still do that in the UK, where you're really learning on the job, right? So because he was doing that electronic and computing, you know, he did a lot of the practical side of it all, you know, the wiring and I don't know, you know, the practical side of electronics and computing. But there are some theory behind it. So, you know, you know, 2/3 is on practical, 1/3 is on the technical, theoretical side or inside of it. But he was willing to put up with that because he found the practical side of it really interesting. Now, I said to him, why did you choose that course? Did you know you liked electronic? He said, no, not really. But when he looked through the list and looked at the curricula, that was the one which seemed to suit him the most, right? The lesser of all evil, that was the way he put it, right? So he chose that, and it turned out to be a good choice, and he really enjoyed that course, and his performance was well. And then it turned out the government, I think this might be a new initiative, but Hong Kong government, you know, do periodically put out new schemes, try to encourage and give opportunities to young people. So the civil service, the electronic services department, electrical services department, which is a government civil service department, right? They were putting out a new scheme, trying to recruit young apprentice, really, right, as on a contract term to join the department. So he applied for it, and he got accepted on that civil service course. So now he is a civil servant to all intents and purposes, and he get paid for learning. And so the great thing is, right, that he's been he doesn't have to pay any school fees. He get an allowance, a monthly allowance, which is really quite generous. I think it works out to be about 12,000 Hong Kong dollars per month, and it will go up with each successful year they complete. And he's learning on the job, and he finds it really, really interesting. And at the end of the 3 years, if he does well, he'll get offered a permanent position. But the icing on the cake is that he was told recently that because his performance is so well, they are willing to offer him an opportunity to study overseas for a degree following his diploma in electrical engineering. And this scheme will pay for not only his overseas degree costs, but also his living costs as well. So here's a young man who for most of his life been written off as a failure. And here he's finally found something he's really good at. And the big thing he said to me was, right, he said that in his own words, I always knew I wasn't stupid. You know I'm clever. I just wasn't suited to the DSE way of teaching. So, and when I heard those words, I nearly teared up because it was so good that he didn't let all those years of, predictions of glooms and failures put him down. The other point to this story I wanted to highlight is that I remember asking him, right, so why did you wait until your Form 5 repeat to quit and decide to join the vocational college? Because the vocational college also take people after secondary 3. So he wouldn't have needed to waste those Form 4 repeat and Form 5 year. And he said he couldn't make that decision because all his life he was told that there's only one path, right? He was told that he needed to study hard, complete his secondary education, go to university, and then get a decent job, preferably as a doctor, lawyer, accountant, or whatever, right? So it was a very narrow path that he was taught to as his future. So he couldn't get over giving up that dream. And another example I want to share is a personal one, right, with my daughter. So again, we have 4 children. 3 are at universities, or one completed her university recently. But our youngest, who is 16 and she's going up to Form 5. And in Hong Kong, we have DSE, which is the traditional public exams at the end of Form 6. But the government also offer applied learning subjects. So these are more practical vocational type of courses. These are available to kids at Form 5, and this lasts for 2 years. And I think, right, for a lot of traditional parents, they kind of turn their noses up at these APL learnings because these are for kids who are not as clever, right? They are not as bright, who can't do the DSEs. So they write them off and put them into the APL. And I must admit, right, before I didn't really look into these courses, but recently, because our Anna, she's not suited to the traditional mode of learning, but she's a bright girl, and we know that because she takes part in many extracurricular activities. In fact, she's in the Hong Kong Youth Cadet Services, and she is really good at that, and she loves it. She doesn't mind hard work on that. She's very organized. She gets up on time for those, and she's very infused on those type of activities, organizing it, taking part in it. So we know she likes that kind of learning, more practical, more hands-on. Anyway, back to the APL, right? So we decided to look onto those courses. And again, I was surprised to learn that there are really a lot of different subjects available for kids to learn. And in fact, the one she's picked now is on healthcare practices. And it's actually really good when you look at it as the curriculum. And more importantly, how it's going to be examined. So for young people who are not suited to the, just regurgitating, just reading and then memorizing and writing it out again, right? There are some kids who are just better at the practical side, learning by doing. So this particular course, I was so pleased when I looked through it, because 70% of the assessment is actually on the practical learning side of it, how you take care of patients, on first aid, and all those, and the written side only represent like 30%. So that alone tells me that Anna will be better suited to that way of teaching. So as parents, we all want to do the best for our children. I understand that. I think we need to look beyond just the traditional path, right? In fact, the Hong Kong government definitely provides a lot of different options. I know, for instance, that they also have a earn as you learn scheme, where there are certain professions, I guess, where the government knows there's a shortage of manpower, where they will encourage students, young people, right, who don't want to pursue the traditional DSE, or maybe they've done the traditional DSE but not suited to go on to universities, right? So they have these earn as you learn, where you can go in, I think it's like inspection, laboratory, quality control kind of thing. There's also building construction side of learning, of a diploma, where you can actually learn and you get paid to learn. You don't have to pay any school fees. And at the end of that, so after 2 years, you have practical experience that employers value, and you also have a qualification, a recognized qualification. It could be a diploma, it could be a high diploma. So these are really worthwhile options to pursue. Instead, where I see a lot of young people who don't have the qualification, or who wasn't able to get onto a degree course, and instead they do an associate degree, which is a 2 years intermediary kind of qualification. But the problem with that is, right, it's neither here nor there, because those are private courses. So the fees are really expensive. I think they are like 40 or 50,000 Hong Kong dollars per year as fees. But at the end of it, there are lots of young people coming out with this associate degree, and there's no guarantee that they can then go on to pursue a full degree. But then when you leave with this associate degree, you are really no better off to someone who did a high dip, for instance. In fact, I would hasten to say that a young person who followed the high dip path, higher diploma path, probably come out even better, more attractive to an employer, because they actually have a qualification plus practical experience. So please, as parents, right, let's show our kids that there are lots of different ways to be successful, right? Success is not defined just by degree and then being a doctor or a lawyer or accountant. Thank you for your time. So I hope you share my link and subscribe to my channel. Bye-bye.
Right, so I'm actually really impressed with the variety of topics available under the applied learning for the secondary Form 5 students in Hong Kong. So you go into Google and just type in HK and then applied learning, and it'll bring you to this page. And if you come down to here and go under prospectus, and this is the latest one, obviously, right, for students starting this year, and the courses last for 2 years, so it takes you from 2020 to 2022. And we go down, let's see, go to page 8, recollect. You can see the contents. So they run the gamuts of creative studies, media, the traditional business, management and law, services. You have cakes, pastry, Western cuisines, but also interesting things like passenger terminal operations. Now I know we have the pandemic at the moment, but prior to that, everyone keeps saying how air travel is only going to increase, right? And hopefully once the pandemic is over, the air traffic volume will increase as well. And you have childcare. Again, this is an area I often hear people say they are lacking in difficult to hire people. Applied sciences, so animal care, for the kids who are interested in pets, looking after pets and career in that. There's also the medicinal side of it, so Chinese medicine, healthcare, fitness, psychology. Next one down, next category is engineering as well. So we got electrical engineering, construction, aviation, railway studies, and then Chinese business. So for my daughter, she was interested in the healthcare practice, so we looked at that. And the organizers, so each of these subjects are actually by different organization. So I know when we looked at law enforcement, it was going to be offered by Baptist University. So for healthcare practices, it's going to be provided by Caritas, which is a well-known Hong Kong institute, and it comes under applied science. And you can learn it. It's taught in either Chinese or English or a mixture of both. Now here's the bit, right? Learning activity and highlights. So it's primarily case studies and simulations and role plays. So which will be the practical side of learning, which will really appeal to our daughter. And they also, for each of the subject, they also have a little segment telling you, typically what are the further studies that would be linked to this particular topic and a type of career pathways. So as you can see, anything medicinal here, right? Nursing, physiotherapy, nutrition. And here's some practical information, right? It's going to start in September. Now for these applied learning courses, more often than not, they're taught on a Saturday. So here is a Saturday morning or afternoons. And Caritas offer this course in 2 particular centers they have. So they have it at either Tuen Wan or near us in Tin Hau. So we looked at this even further. So the next page has more information on the actual course structure. And this is where we went through this with our daughter. As you can see here, it's actually break down into hours. So for each of these courses over 2 years, I think it's a total of 150 hours. And they break this down in terms of different areas of learning. But again, what appealed to us is the practical side. So 39 hours is spent on the applied learning, on human physiology, food and nutrition, medical laboratory science. And then you have 69 hours on the actual practical skills, so nursing practices, first aid, physiotherapy skills. And then below here you have 39 hours on simulation and training, and also on healthy aging. So that to us seemed to indicate a lot more hands-on teaching rather than just sitting in a classroom at a desk and reading materials, written materials. So we went one step further and we looked at how this subject would be assessed. So we went to the Hong Kong examination website, and again they have a page dedicated to the applied learning subjects, and we go to below here, they actually break down in each one. So again, we were only looking at healthcare practices, so we clicked on that, and I looked at the assessment scheme, and we looked at 2022, and it provides again a lot more details. So I can see here the practical assessments, right? So that's 10%, 10%, that's 20%. Case study and practical assessment, 20%, so we're altogether now 40%. The measurement of vital signs, another 10%, so we're up to 50% now. And then project and oral presentation, another 20%, so that is 70% in total on the more practical side of assessment. And the written side really is only 10% here and 20% on the test on first aid and the applied science side of it. So that gives us a lot of reassurance that this way of assessment is again more suited to our daughter. So that is APL. So I would really encourage any parents whose kids are either Form 4 or Form 3, and you know by this stage, right, that they're not suited to the traditional DSE subject, to really look into what APL can offer. So I mentioned also in my video about VTC, the vocational training, right? So my friend's son, who decided to pursue the diploma course, so he went to under the secondary 3 full-time course. And again, look at here, right? You have the applied sciences, so anything from biotechnology, chemical technology, occupational safety. Then there's the more business side, accounting and marketing. But there's also, real estate, which is a big part of Hong Kong's economy, advertising, event marketing. Now, the thing to look out for here, right, is that all the subjects that are previously listed, these are all free. So as students and as parents, you don't need to pay anything. But anything with this SF logo next to it, that is self-funded. That means you will have to pay, if your child decides to take that, then you will need to pay school tuition fees for those. But I do think, though, even without these, right, there's lots of courses available which don't require additional tuition fees. There's also childcare, which is also very popular, I know, for some of the young people. Design. Now, design is also an area where lots of kids seem to show interest in, right? Advertising, digital media, visual arts and culture. I think my daughter has friends who's doing dance as well. Film and television production. Engineering, so civil engineering, building studies, surveying, architectural studies. So there really is a lot to choose from. So, if your kid decided again, right, at Form 3, after finishing Form 3, that the traditional DSE route is not for him or her, they should really look into the vocational courses, the diploma courses. So you have hospitality, hotel and catering, airport operations, leisure management, international hospitality and tourism. Information technology is another area, right, that's very popular and that's going to grow. Now, game software development, I can see that being of appeal to many young people. Cloud and data center administration. So these are skills, right, I think a lot of businesses will be looking for as well. Data science and analytics. People would pay a lot of money studying in the private sector for that. And here you can study a high diploma on that for a few years. and it doesn't cost your, any tuition fees. There's also obviously interdisciplinary programs as well, fitness, arts and culture, public relations. So, as parents, again, I'll urge you not to, disregard these and really sit down with your child to look through what are available. I also mentioned earlier, right, the earn and learn options. So, they also have earn and learn options, right, for students who only just finished secondary 3. Now, again, these are a little bit more narrow, right? So these are obviously careers or jobs which government perceive to be in demand. So they're willing to promote these particular type of courses where students can go into that and they learn, and they also get an allowance, I think, whilst they're learning. So we look into this one, for instance, right? Electrical and mechanical engineering. So there's a 2 years course available to students, and I think they get a monthly allowance of like $4,000 if they pursue that whilst they're learning that. But there are also other options, right? For instance, here there's also Institute of Construction. So construction is a industry that's always crying out for talent. They're saying they're in short demand. So for students who just completed Form 3, they can do diploma in construction. There's also a surveying one here, site surveying. So we click into that. So I think, again, this is a 2 years course, at the end of which you get a diploma. The fee is free, so you don't need to pay any tuition fees. And so here the career progression. You can go on to further studies, obviously. But I think there are actually a lot of companies you can get a job quite easily. And the requirement for entry is relatively low, right? So, you can complete your DSE and just have a level 1. You can still be able to take this course. So here the schedule is a full-time course. And I think I read somewhere, right, again for this one. Oh yeah, here. Students can get a training allowance, a monthly training allowance of $4,800 per month. So, they get paid, in fact, for learning, right? I think that would appeal to quite a lot of young people as well. So there are lots of options. And in fact, I forgot to mention in my earlier part of the video, one of my ex-bosses, and he's a Brit who's been working in Hong Kong for many years. So they are English family, and his son, his oldest boy, also went to international school and didn't do very well in the traditional exams. I can't remember whether it was IB or traditional A-levels, and couldn't go on to university. And of course, it was all, whirlwind, doom and gloom. But then after they, calmed down a little bit and they looked at different options, his son went on to a catering course in Hong Kong. Again, it was free, and he did a diploma catering course, I think, in Western cuisine. And in the end, he ended up working for a Western restaurant in Mandarin Oriental. I think it was Amber he worked for. It's one of the Michelin star restaurant in Mandarin hotel. So it's a 5-star hotel, well-known restaurant, and he's doing really, really well. So again, let's be more open-minded. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, right? On what is available to our kids.